Right, the stream is starting and we are also recording.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So it's been a week. Um, we're working on this nullable infrastructure wrapper stuff. Um, and as I recall, last time we had finished creating the nullable infrastructure wrapper, but there were a couple of problems with it. One was that we had sort of just hacked our way around the TypeScript stuff. And the other I realized after we talked, which is that I think we actually did our configuration wrong. Um, do you want to just sort of remind everybody what we're
Yeah,
doing here?
so here's the stuff on the screen, like in detail. The code that we've been working on is around this OctaKit GitHub um, class, which was one adapter of two in my old ports and adapters, or the existing ports and adapters design, where we have another implementation of it called fake GitHub, which is like an in-memory one. And the idea of what we're doing here is to make OctaKit GitHub be the only GitHub client implementation that we need. And actually, what we're kind of going to do so this is me starting to learn to understand this nullable infrastructure pattern. We're kind of going to inject, although only through these factory methods, a more of a fake or a null object to represent the OctaKit dependency, which is actually GitHub's own dependency. And yeah, that's what we're working through.
And the big picture here, of course, is that you have a tool for automatically
Right.
changing which repositories people have access to in 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 the
Yeah,
Cucumber
in the Cucumber organization, yeah. So the
organization.
sort of purpose of this whole app, we have a permissive commit bit policy. So every time you get a pull request merged, we add you to the contributors team, and that gives you the right to push to main on most of Cucumber's repositories. And that group of people has been growing over the years. There's about 350 people now in that group, but actually most of them don't actively contribute anymore. And what we want to do is be able to retire them. So we've written a JavaScript GitHub action that can do that. And in order to test it, we need to be able to make API calls. Well, in order for it to work, it needs to be able to make API calls to GitHub to move people around between teams and stuff and find out when their last commits were. And in order to test it, we need a way to kind of run that logic without making calls to GitHub, because that would be slow and brittle and stuff.
Yeah, and we saw that in the last couple of times because your OctoKit GitHub has integration tests that do actually talk to GitHub, and they're painfully slow in that it takes about 8 seconds for the build to run, which is fast enough to do it regularly, but definitely slow enough that I feel it every time.
Yeah, and we've only got a handful of tests here, so it would be realistically it would be more if you had a sort of maybe a more mature product that you're working on. I think the thing that's interesting to note though about sort of maybe a little bit in defense of the ports and adapters style is that I would only tend to run the tests for this adapter, so those expensive integration tests, when you change this particular adapter. And the idea is that unless you need new things from your GitHub client, you've kind of written this thing and you put it in a box and you forget about it. You might literally put it in another jar or another npm module, and most of the time it just sits there in the box and just works. And the only reason you would ever need to run those tests again is if either you're adding new behavior to it, you find there's a bug with it, or if GitHub somehow changes the behavior of their API, right, and it stops behaving the way it used to. So a lot of the time you can just kind of leave these things alone, so it doesn't cause you that much pain day to day that the tests are slow. But obviously, if you do end up needing to do maintenance on it, then you're back in that hole of like, oh gosh, it takes 30 seconds to get feedback from it or whatever.
And I don't think that's unique to the ports and adapters pattern. I think anytime you have an adapter slash infrastructure wrapper slash gateway, it is a really good idea to have tests around it that actually make sure it works against as close to the real thing as you can get. And those tests do tend to be a pain in the ass to set up and really slow to run, on the order of hundreds of milliseconds, even seconds, to run.
And therefore,
So
you want to run them as infrequently as possible.
yeah. So putting it in a different module or having a different build target that that only runs when the files are changed, or doing dependency analysis and only running them when the files are changed. All makes a lot of sense. But we are working in this code, so we do have to run those tests. And as I said last time, we had finished making the OctoKit GitHub class nullable, which means it can be constructed in a state where it does not actually talk to GitHub, which has the benefit of being very fast. And we thought we were done, except again, the typing was just sort of hacked in. And also over the break, I had a realization that the way we did the setup, the configuration for that nullable object was probably not correct. And I don't know if you want to start with the typing work, or if you want to start with that part of it. I thought I'd leave that up to you.
Well, I'm curious to know what your insight is there. I suppose the question I have is, will it be strategically better to get the typing out of the way before we make this change, or is it going to be kind of the same difference? Like if we make this change with fixing the configuration in whatever way it needs fixing, we're still going to have to implement types for that. So it's probably going to be the same amount of work whether we do it before.
That's an open question. Why don't, because I don't actually know what we need to do for the typing. You did do some work on it over the break.
Yeah.
I looked at it. I said, looks like Matt knows what he's talking about. Close tab. So I'm looking forward to you explaining it to me.
Yeah, so my worry would be that we'd go and do a load of work to get the typing right, and then we'll have to change the configuration stuff. So I think it might be better to tackle the configuration work first.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what my thoughts were around that, and then you'll probably have a good idea of what makes sense to do next. So if you'll scroll down to our create. Yeah,
you
so
mean
down in our null
constructor
OctoKit.
for the null OctoKit? Is this one?
Yeah. So we pass in a list of team members and the has committed objects, right? And as you recall last time, I said, well, let's set it up in a VCR format where you pass in the things that you want on each call, and each call you can get back different things. And I realized that's something that I do when when I wrote my nullable HTTP client. That's the way I had it set up. I said, for this endpoint, here's the results you're going to configure to come back. But it actually occurred for me that for GitHub, that doesn't necessarily make sense. If we ask it to list the members in the organization, we wouldn't expect that to be different every time. It would just be the same members every time. If we asked it to list the team members who've committed, that's not going to change every time we make that request. It will generally be the same. What we didn't do that we should have done, and this was my mistake, is we should have been saying, what do our users of this nullable infrastructure need? And we just sort of said,
like outside in.
Yeah, exactly. We should have been looking at, and normally when I do this, I set up the nullability, but I don't do the configuration until I've had a chance to look at that question.
Yeah.
But it just didn't occur to me this last time. So I think what we should do is look at the specs that you've written, the features, and say, well, what are these asking for, and what kind of configuration is useful for?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think when we were talking about what there was left to do last time, that was the other big thing, was to actually use this thing in the Cucumber tests. And I had a suspicion that we were going to run into some interesting stuff there around the fact that the way you express things in a Cucumber test, where you've got several given steps which are separate statements, separate functions that run, and they're all kind of building up the picture of what that configuration would need to look like. So there would need to be some way for us to build up that picture of the configuration rather than just having it kind of built in one shot. So yeah, that's probably an interesting thing for us to get our heads around. I mean, when I think about just the question of, like, I don't know if you're following me.
I am.
Multiple responses to the query of who's in the team in an org. We do have like these two queries here that we would see running at the end of a scenario. Then Greg should be in the alumni team and Greg should not be in the committers team. So those would be two calls to GitHub to that method call of list members in org, where you
So that I think we're
pass
going to
the
that one I
list.
think we're going to change,
Right.
because uh, that's testing by investigating the side effects. But we
Yeah,
have added the
right.
ability to investigate directly what our
What
code has done.
happened? So we may not need to do that at
Right.
all.
Yeah. So what I think we're going to
Right.
do
Whereas we
here
do
is,
use list members in org for we use them for get members of, which is where that drills down to list members in org in order to just find out who all of the people are, so we can iterate over them to find out when they last made a commit. Yes.
yeah. So go back to retire inactive contributors, if you don't mind. Now, I have to admit, it's a little weird. I don't use Cucumber. I just do tests directly. So it's a little bit strange for me to kind of have that separation. But normally um, when I'm making a nullable infrastructure, when I'm making infrastructure nullable, uh, I'll have started out and might have written something like retire inactive contributors if I'm doing it sort of pedantically and really outside in a slow way, instead of just jumping ahead as I sometimes will when it's faster or when it's simpler. Um, uh, what I would have done here is I would have implemented GitHub and I would just hard coded answers in there. And then I would go in and I'd make it real.
Yeah.
And then I would come in and I'd back out. I would take my integration test, my thing that is now an integration test because I'm testing retire active contributors, which is calling the real GitHub, and I will change that to be using the null version, and that will sort of guide what my configuration needs to be
Yeah.
the null version.
Yeah. Well, that is essentially how we did it for with the workflow with building it out from Cucumber as well. Was that we used, we sort of built in concert the fake, which the testable for the GitHub client, but it starts out as very simple and probably hard coded, and then as you have more scenarios where you need to do different stuff, then it starts to have a like in memory hash map or something of the responses or the state that's in it. Yeah, so it's pretty similar. This sort of two evolve together.
Yeah. And I think, that's part of why I think this has been a little bit difficult is, one, we're just doing it for the first time. So we keep getting distracted by, does the IDE work? we've lost our connection. How does
Yeah.
TypeScript work? But so I just want to look at retire inactive contributors. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd just like to sort of puzzle my way through it and figure out what it's doing.
I'm seeing
And I
that
think,
the IDE is telling us there's a mistake in it as well, which is interesting.
is there?
Yeah.
I'm not
We're
seeing
missing a
that
couple
actually.
of awaits on lines 22 and 21.
Oh yeah,
But
look
yeah,
at that.
go for it. Just
Oh, so that's interesting. So the fact that your fake wasn't properly asynchronous means that you have a bug here.
yeah.
Um,
Well, is it a bug? I think in practice, this action's going to run on a cron job once a day. So the fact that it returns slightly early before those, what would be a problem would be if either of those two functions failed, and you probably wouldn't get a clean failure
yeah,
in the GitHub action UI because you'd get some sort of like background promise exception rather than
right. Yeah,
seeing
yeah.
it failed cleanly.
And that's actually something we might want to, if depending on how much time we want to spend on this, we might want to introduce the ability for our null to air out. That is
Yeah,
actually something I really commonly do.
yeah,
Um, and and test, our error handling. But yeah, let me puzzle this through. It's fairly small and hopefully not that complicated. So we're figuring out when people are inactive. We're setting up some constants. We're getting the members of the committer team, and then we're looping through them. And if they've committed since the cutoff date, then we add them to the team. We add them to the alumni team, and we remove them from the committers team.
if they have not committed
Right,
since the cutoff date.
right. So what if I'm testing this? I'm going to probably do a 0-1 many thing. So I'm going to test when there's 0 people um, who need to be retired. There's one who needs to be retired. And there's many who need to be retired. Or honestly, when I look at this, probably I'd just jump to, we've got one person who's not retired and one person who is, and let's make sure the right things happen. Now, if I'm testing that with the nullable infrastructure, I'm not depending on any GitHub side effects. then what I'm going to want to set up is the ability to say, we've got 2 or 3 members, let's say 2 members, and we have one person who's not committed from a particular time. And that should be sufficient to test this. So I think my initial instincts of just saying we just need to have a static response coming from the nullable infrastructure wrapper is correct. But that's
So
just
that's
looking
all
at this
like
code, not looking at the specs at all.
like a fixture. Yeah, so you could definitely do it like that, and we could rewrite the feature file to work like that. If we look at the feature, what we actually did was basically what you're saying. So we have a rule: users become inactive after a year, although actually that's now configurable.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and because it's now configurable, there's a background step which is basically like a before each type of test setup thing. You can imagine it. Given the maximum absence before retirement is 100 days, so it's actually not 365 and a quarter days, it's just 100. And then we have one scenario for Greg, who has become inactive, and we have one scenario for Aslak, who has been active recently. And so because Greg last committed 100 days ago when the action runs, Greg should... when we look at the state, we see that Greg's gone into the alumni team and he shouldn't be in the committers team anymore, but he was at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, Aslak, who started out in the committers team as well, turns into... stays in the same state. And yeah, we modelled this as 2 separate scenarios, one for each of those cases. But you could have a setup that said, here's Greg and here's Aslak, and Aslak last committed 99 days ago and Greg last committed. You could scrunch these down into one scenario quite realistically and reasonably.
Yeah, and I don't know that. I mean, I like how readable this was. When you first showed me this code base, I looked at the features and I read through and I understand exactly what's going on here. So I don't know that the way I would test this is actually the right way. Well, there's no right answer, right? But I don't know that it's better. But what this tells me is that if we look at retire inactive contributors on line 20, if you wouldn't mind switching over there, what we need in our nullable configuration is we need to basically set up a set of pairs. Say this author last committed on this date.
Yeah. So roughly, is it on the date? Let me just check what we'd actually do on the inside. So when we do has committed since, what we actually do is first a query to get all of the repos, right? So we're going to loop over all of the repos, and we're going to ask each repo, have you had any commits by this author since this date? So we don't even need to necessarily know when the date of their last commit was. We just need to know true or false. Would we say yes if we were asked whether they've made a commit recently?
Yeah. I don't want our null to be...
this null to think, I suppose, really.
What I want to avoid, I think it's very tempting to have our stub drift in the direction of being a fake, where it has logic in it and it's actually trying to simulate the behavior. And I think we really want to avoid that, because that gets complicated and error prone. But at the same time, I don't want to have to. I think the fact that we are asking this question, author comma cutoff date, we want to test. If I'm looking at retiring inactive contributors on line 20, we want to test that we are getting that pair correct, right? It's not good enough to configure our nullable to say has committed since always returns true for this author, because we actually want to do the fence post testing. We want to say this author at 99 days, this author at 100 days.
Yeah, and also, it's actually crucial that we call the GitHub API with this since field with the right date, right? It matters, because if we didn't get that right, then GitHub wouldn't give us the right answer.
Right, right. So that's what I'm thinking about when I'm setting up this configuration for my nullables is how can I not do a fake, not have any logic, but have enough data in my configuration so that I can test the stuff that matters.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Right. That makes sense. It's really interesting understanding how you think about this, and because I find it a lot messier having to use these heuristics at somebody else's API boundary. Like the thing that's simple for me about the hexagonal style is that once I've designed what I want this API for my ideal GitHub client to be like, that's where I do the faking at. So there's a sort of
And
the
we're still
behavior
doing
of the
that.
simulated thing is all like in the semantics of that thing that I've designed myself. Whereas we're having to think about not
No, I think
only
you're
how do we want to fake it, but also how is it going to talk to GitHub about this, and are we covering enough of what's in the thing that when we're building in the infrastructure class.
no, I think you're mistaken about that.
Okay.
What we're designing here is just the API that is custom built for your application. We're designing how we want to configure OctoKit GitHub, your wrapper, your adapter, and how we make that configuration work against the thing against our GitHub calls. That's an implementation detail. But the design of what we make null, what we allow to be configured, that is all at the exact same level as the rest of the adapter
Right.
API.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah. You keep saying that, but I think I'm still confused by just having to get to know. Then because then we still have to think about how do we implement that in the
Yeah,
nullable
and I think that's because
class.
this.
Yeah.
I think it's because it's new to you.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
sort
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
thinking about the whole thing, but I'm actually I think that what you enjoy about ports and adapters is also the way I like to think about things, which is that I want to have a really when I talk about an infrastructure wrapper or an adapter, I want to have a really clear distinction between all the mess of talking to the outside world or stubbing out the outside world and the nice, clean, clear, simple API that's purpose built for my application. And the purpose of the adapter is to provide that gateway, that translation from my needs to the outside world's
Yeah.
needs.
Right. So I think I've got a clearer idea about how I'd like to proceed now.
Go ahead.
I mean, one idea that's occurred to me is that we could build a brand new test just for this function, right? Using the nullable infrastructure, which is sort of more the way you would probably always have done it. My worry about doing that is that we might kind of go down a little bit of a path that still doesn't work for the cucumber features. So what I think I'd like to do is go right back to the scenario, reword it in the way that we did right. I'm not even sure if we had the cameras on when we reworded it
I
initially,
think we
where
did,
you were
yeah.
just explaining to me how you would express it differently in terms of those events that have been emitted about what's happened rather than looking at the state. And then just try and like call the nullable infrastructure from the given steps and design our API here for setting up the configuration. I think that would be a good, even if we don't get it all wired together. I think if we've thought through how would we build up the configuration objects, like what sort of things are we going to say to it,
Okay.
then the
And set
pieces of the
aside the
puzzle.
typekit or the TypeScript types for later.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I think we might build some types because we're going to throw away the configuration that we've got anyway. It sounds
Or at
like,
least revise it. Yeah.
yeah. So we kind of could just build something new from how we want it, and then try and make the two bits work together. I think.
So my only problem with that plan, which I think is a sound plan, is that whenever I'm doing something new, I try to keep the number of unknowns to one. And right now, it seems like we have two unknowns in the plan you're talking about. One is how do we effectively use a null? How do we effectively configure AutoCAD GitHub in a nullable based test? And second, how do we make that configuration play nicely with Cucumber?
So what's the first one again? How do we?
Just getting it working at all.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Because I kind of both of those kind of feel like one thing to me, but I can see how you can cleave them apart. Yeah.
Well, the distinction I'm making here, I think the wrinkle that Cucumber is going to introduce is that in a pure code-based test, we can do a create null with a big object, and we can just hard code everything we want. Once we get to Cucumber, we're going to have to build up that configuration piecemeal.
Yeah.
So that we can play nicely with it, given this, given that.
So we might have to kind of that will make things a little bit more complicated or different to how you've done it before, because you've never done that before.
Right. Exactly.
So what if we did a first iteration where we write a direct test for it for next door to retire inactive contributors, which is more doing it in the style that you're used to anyway, and then we bear in mind that those will need to have some sort of builder for the configuration, and we can add that later and make it.
Yeah, we can refactor to a builder.
Yeah.
And I actually have some thoughts on that, but I'd like to, because we don't know exactly what we want that configurability API to look like. I'd like to sort of, and I think just one test, like we don't need to be comprehensive. We just need to sort of, paste something together that works to give us that information. And then we will use that and we'll move it into the Cucumber steps.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it.
Okay. So I think, well, let's see, how can we make a retire inactive contributors .test.ts?
Yeah,
is that possible?
I'll make one.
So I know you're streaming this. Do we have anybody watching the stream?
I have no idea, James. I'd have to go and
well, if you're out there, hi
page.
everybody.
Do you want to add the following file to Git? Don't ask me about that. Don't ask me about that. Okay, and then we need to put some stuff in this test file. Is there any sort of boilerplate we need, or is it pretty much just describe the thing? Shall I start doing that? Oh, I don't like the way it writes that title thing in the editor for me. Why have you put brackets? Thank you. Okay. And then we can get straight into it. Retires someone. No, actually, it leaves active contributors where they are. Right, we'll start with that.
Okay. Right.
Shall I try and run it?
Yeah, please.
It doesn't like the grep thing, does it?
It does and it doesn't. It always gives us that warning, but then it works. So.
Oh. Well, no, that didn't work then. That was just a TypeScript error.
Oh no, you're right. You're right. Is equal.
but we can use only, and then it works, right? That was what we did before.
So it should just be equal to, I think.
Go. This is not chai, which might be what you're thinking of with the assertion framework.
Maybe. I'm not familiar with Hamjest at all.
Yeah. Anyway, there we go. So we've got a way to run one. Oh no, it's still running the test. So
we might have left an only.
Yeah, maybe we have.
Yeah, it's on AutoKit GitHub. I'm just gonna wipe that out real quick.
Let me know when you've done it, and I'll run the test.
I've done it. Yeah,
that's better.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and if I run the test again, they should still work.
I wonder if we can do. Isn't there some sort of running continuously in Mocha W? Doesn't always play that. No,
it doesn't. That's all right. So what we want to do here is we need a GitHub client. I'm looking at retire inactive contributors, and we need a GitHub client, and we need a configuration.
Yeah. And that configuration is not the nullable infrastructure wrapper configuration. That's the configuration of the GitHub action. It's the inputs that the GitHub action was passed.
Right. So if I say that our configuration is a new configuration, or do I use the configuration builder? How do I do this?
No, I think that's just got defaults on the constructor. Yeah.
All right. I've not done this before, so actually I'm going to let you type that one in.
No, that was it. You've done it. We just need to import it. And then we need to create a GitHub client that is made from the factory.
But we need a maximum absence before retirement, don't we?
Well, we can set that if we want to. Yeah, it does use a default, so we don't have to right now. Yeah. Not going to keep those semicolons for long. Once Pretty gets its hands.
Oh, right. Prettier gets rid of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then we need a GitHub. And that's going to be a AutoKit.
We probably don't want to use new, do we? We're going to use the factory.
Yeah. And
create.
So the if let me just look at AutoKit GitHub real quick. AutoKit GitHub right now has a create null factory and it has a constructor. So I'm going to start out, because I take really small steps and I make so many mistakes that I have to keep my surface area to an absolute minimum. So I want to see this work without using our nullable stuff, or at least fail in the way expected, and then put in a thing. So AutoKit constructor takes an AutoKit and an org. Oh, and to make an AutoKit, I got to do all this stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna live on the edge. I'm just gonna make the nullable version then.
I'm with you. We can do this.
All right.
We can.
And I'm gonna leave the options out because it's set up so that it will work without them. So we've made the configuration. Now I should be able to retire inactive contributors, which is just a function.
You want to await it.
Right.
And then how do we assert that nothing's happened? We need to watch the...
So what we need to do is we need to track the changes. So GitHub changes equals GitHub dot track changes dot data.
So this is very much like one of the tests we already have in the OctKit GitHub nulls.
Most likely, yeah. Except the difference is now we're calling retire inactive contributors.
So we're just going to assert that. Where is it? Null instance. So that's all testing responses to queries. Where did we test the stuff about? Maybe is it up with the...
How do I do an assert equals with Hamjust?
Assert that blah 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 equal to... Right. Sorry, I was reading the other test. Yeah, there you go. That's right. So equal to is just another import that we need to add.
Okay, what's the quick key for that?
Option enter.
And it's not liking it for me.
Wow.
Can you press
Yeah,
option enter on it? Because when I do that, it just tells me to suppress with TS ignore.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. You didn't do that?
Yeah, I did. I just...
Okay.
I don't know. I did something and it helped me add it.
Oh, you got the watcher in, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, it doesn't always play nice with TypeScript though. Sometimes if you have badly compiling TypeScript, it crashes the whole thing and you have to restart it. But...
So I've just pressed save and I don't see it detecting.
Yeah, there we go. Brilliant. It is looking for test.ts files, so it kind of should be working. But let's just stop it.
Can you make it go? By the way, you know how I said last time I was getting a lot of delays? I think that's because I'm the remote person. And it is only showing my keystrokes, I think, when they do a round trip to your machine and back, which is not good. It is such a painful experience to type when I'm getting, occasional 100 millisecond delays.
Do you know, I used to do this when we lived in Scotland, when we first moved to this remote farmhouse in Scotland. I could only get internet through satellite, and I had a 1.5 second delay on if I was SSH'd into a computer. I would press a key and you have to wait for all the bits to go up to space, down to the computer, back up to space, back to me again. 1.5 seconds. And I used to pair on, used to use a thing called Mosh, that's sort of like Tmux, but it did that thing a bit like Google Docs where it would let you see your key press and then it would send it. And then if it ended up doing something that looked different, it would fix what you saw on the screen, but it would let you get the feeling like you were typing locally, which is amazing because otherwise it was just impossible.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry that you're experiencing that.
Thanks. No, I mean, it sounds like 1.5 seconds would definitely be worse.
Yeah, I didn't mean to best
It's
you
just maybe we should, maybe we should at some point figure out how to make this work.
We could try VS Code, and see if that's different. Yeah. So is this what we would have expected to see, that it doesn't fail? I think it probably would, right?
Well, at this point, yeah, I think it is what we'd expected to see. So now what I want to do, though, is I want to say that it, rather than it leaves active, I think what we need to do is configure this properly.
Yeah.
So it's sort of passing by coincidence right now.
Because we haven't got an active contributor at the moment.
Right, exactly. So what we want to say is we've got, and this is where this is going to start to design our configuration interface. In order to test this, we need to be able to say, you still with me?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about what I want to be able to say.
Yeah.
Like in terms of the sort of scenarios that we have an individual who is on a team and has made, like right now, because there are other things it needs to be able to do, but it doesn't even support them yet. So right now it's just that they're in the committers team and they've made a commit on their last commit was on a given date.
Yeah, so our team members are going to be, I'm going to code this as if it's working the way I want it to, even though not the way it actually happens. So I want to just be able to say our team members are active member and inactive member. I'm going to change this to say it just retires inactive members. And our team members are active member and inactive member. And our commit dates are active member
Now we need to be able to do like date maths in.
Oh yeah, that's
JavaScript,
not fun.
but we do need to do that. I'm wondering if we can lean on any of the helpers that I've made.
Has committed since date.
Duration of days, today minus. So you can do today dot minus.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
today.
we can actually. Can I show you what we can do? Because I'm happy
please.
to trust these helpers that we built because they're super simple. So today dot minus duration of, let's say. So you can look inside those classes if you want to see them because they're just in this code base, and they're like 2 lines of code just to basically add a bit of sugar around the.
I totally trust that. So what I'm going to do then is I assume that an active member is 99 days.
Right.
And an inactive member is 100 days.
Yeah.
So that's I think the configuration we want. Does that have the ergonomics? So when I'm building these things, when I'm building an API, I always start out with the user of it, and I'm always thinking, what's going to be ergonomical? What is going to be the most convenient for me to use? I don't know if that's how you think about it or not.
Yeah. Well, so when I think about the language that we're using in the given steps, we say the user is part of a particular team. We say they're on the committers team. And so I guess what we mean by team members is we mean committers team members. Well, because they're currently on that committers team. It doesn't matter that they're on any other team.
Yeah, so we get members of committers team. So yeah, what we need to do then is we need to say team members are committers team.
Yeah.
Active member. Inactive member.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the committers team is a level of business logic that AutoKit GitHub should not be aware of. So we need to provide that.
Yeah. Yeah, and eventually, so right now, it's designed. It literally has a hard-coded team name of committers. Mm-hmm. So we might need to change that. Unless we start to make it configurable, we might need to change the name of the key on line 14 to just be committers, so it matches the name of the team that's hard coded in the.
Oh yeah, we do need it to match exactly.
Although ultimately that'll need to be configurable. Ultimately, it'll probably need to go through all of the teams in the org. Except for the alumni team, and kind of move anybody who's on any team and push them into that alumni team. But that's behavior that we don't support yet, so we don't need to worry about it.
And even if we did, even when we do support that, I think this API for configuring our null AutoKit will still work for that scenario.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like it.
So does this have the ergonomics we need?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so this is the point at which I would stash this or comment it out, and then drill down to AutoKit GitHub, write a test to make this work.
All right, this is the point where I'd run this test and watch it fail, and then see what I needed to do to AutoKit GitHub to make it.
Yeah, I guess I jumped ahead a step. I know this is going to fail, and I know how it's going to fail because we didn't write this stuff.
Bloody
but
Mocker isn't doing it though, is it?
Yeah, the watch is just not working.
So yeah, and it might be nice to define a type for the options that we want to have now that we've kind of designed them a bit more.
Yeah, I was thinking that having now, just to jump ahead a little bit, since we're going to want to use a builder down the road, we might want to make our options an actual class.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. We could do that right now. So we could refactor this to pass in a new octakit null octakit configuration class with these values as a starting point. Should we do that?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
So let's just make sure npm run build works, so we got typescriptiness all green so far, because that's kind of the level that we're going to change right now. So I'll probably just take out a oops.
And I actually wonder if before you start, if we should just remove our existing create null.
Why
or let's at least remove the tests of our existing create null.
Ooh, okay. But we could, if we create this type in here that works, we could just go in and change the existing create null next. We don't need to have an intermediate step of removing it. What are you worried about having two things that are inconsistent in the code base at the same time?
Yeah, kind of. I'm more worried about we're going to get into this and then our tests will start failing of create null because we're changing it around. So let's at least remove the tests of create null that we have in octakit GitHub.
Okay, so let's go look at that. So I can't remember what test we've got for create null.
Should be scrolling down towards the bottom. We have a nullability context block.
Yeah, there was some tests that we had at the top.
No,
No, those are using the real thing and tracking changes. Yeah, that's different. Okay, so the null instance, these are all using create null with no arguments.
Yeah.
Then
so right there, the config. Let's just put .skip on that. Not even delete it. Just let's skip
and
those
that gives
tests
us
so that
knowledge that we're going to need to come back here and change it. And this one also.
Yeah, and that way, when we do revise this, we can.
I think we're still going to get a compilation error from TypeScript as soon as we start to type what's get taken into create null. So we might want to rename, create a create null new null or something as the one that we develop, and then
how about we just comment them out?
That's also fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but for starters, we just need to make the class. So I was going to just create it up here for now. Class null octokit configuration or config.
Config, it works for me.
Okay.
And I tend not to like abbreviations, but config's pretty obvious.
I'm going to say constructor, and that's going to take team members, which is going to be a null octokit team members config. Try using the really long name, and then we'll see whether we need to say config or not.
I don't think we need config. I think just saying null octokit team members is enough.
Let's try that. And then what do? We go public. What does it need to be public? Probably. And that's really all that thing is. Probably is just a value object that holds those, and then we need to type.
Eventually, we're going to want to make those optional. I don't know if you want to do that now or not.
Not yet. No, it's easy enough to do. So I think we can probably just have a type for these, which is a okay. I'm rusty. So we're going to have a thing for the key that's a string, and that is going to be an array of strings.
Yeah, we can have any arbitrary string we want.
Say what that is called. So that has to be the team name. Yeah, I did it.
Oh, will that work?
Yeah, I think that's
That allows
right.
us to have
So that's how
any number
you
of team names?
type the key in the object.
Right. Which is interesting because objects, of course, their key is always a string.
Yeah, but you could also use this same style to describe an array, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I am rusty at TypeScript though, so we'll see whether this actually works. And then null octkit commit dates. But you could also use it to have a more restrictive type about what kinds of strings you could say.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then this is going to be an object where this is going to be the member name, right? Which is a string, and then that is going to be a date. So I reckon we should be able to use that here now. So we could go new octkit. Config.
Yeah, that is a pure refactoring. That should actually still work just the same, shouldn't it?
What have I done? And then commit dates is that object. And then that's not a object there. Do I need another parenthesis? Yeah, and obviously we could add all kinds of fancy syntactic sugar and builder stuff around this null octkit config class, but that's just forced us into the constraints of typing for what we can put in here. So like I couldn't put a 5 there, I don't think.
Yeah, that would lead to nice.
So it would be lovely here if we could say type team member, which is a string, and then we can say that this is actually a team member here. And then I think if you tried to do a 5, you'll get a slightly nicer error.
No, that's not with the error. That's what you already did. The error would be if we had.
Oh wait, sorry, it's there.
If it was here and we had foo is equal to.
Yeah, I did 5. It in the wrong spot. But this is actually nice because now that primitive that we were using there, we've kind of defined what it is. So I think that should work in both places now.
Yeah, I like that. In fact, let me go ahead and do the same thing here. Which, of course, if we're going to do this, then this shouldn't really be defined here. It should be defined throughout. We should be using team name and team member.
Right, like in the domain, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of one of those things it's been irritating me about this code base, but not sufficiently to put the time into changing it.
Right.
But yeah, it does use primitives too much. But it's helpful to get our modeling right with the configuration here. And yeah, we could probably borrow those types and use them elsewhere as well.
But what I want to do is I want to say team member name, because there is a distinction between a team member and a team member's name from a domain perspective.
Yeah. And maybe it's just when we think about who they are, it's just a contributor name or a username, because they're not necessarily on, or we don't want any implication that they're only on one particular team, or this is like the sort of
it's actually a GitHub username, and a GitHub team name.
And should it be a capital H for GitHub as well?
Yeah, I don't
Don't
know.
drive yourself mad with it. It's all good.
Yeah. Honestly, team name is obviously should be a capital N, and username is frankly bugging me
It
that
looks
it's a
wrong, doesn't
capital
it?
N.
Yeah, let's get rid of the capital N there.
But now it's not consistent, so
Doesn't
I'm going to
matter.
be,
I like it. I
irritated
like it.
either way.
Yeah, I think it's nicer like that. Yeah, isn't it nice how easy this is to change?
Oh yeah, yeah.
We can just fiddle
One
around with it
thing, I
until
mean,
we're
the reason I like
satisfied.
WebStorm is because it's got really good refactoring. Even
Yeah,
without TypeScript, it's got really good refactoring.
yeah. So, I think that we've got a great design there for the configuration, and I think now if we run npm run build, we're going to get I'm going to be. Oh no, we're not going to get a compilation error because we're using any on the other end, aren't we? It'll just ignore us.
So I think the next step is to take this class that we've just introduced and move it into AutoKit GitHub and export it from there.
Yeah.
And then we can set this aside temporarily and go fix our AutoKit GitHub by re-enabling those tests and making them work properly.
Yeah, we may have some clashing. No, we won't have any clashing names because we hadn't tried to type any of this. So should I just lift it and move it, or is there a fancier WebStormy way of doing that?
There may be, but I never trust it because I'm using JavaScript and it gets it wrong. No. So I don't know how to do it. Just cut and paste is how I do it.
Paste it in the top, and then I need to export some things. So I definitely need to export that one. Maybe that's all I need to export.
Yeah.
Where we retire an active contributor test. So that can. Yeah, it seems happy. Because it can still see the types and tell me about them. I just can't use them. Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. So we've done that. Now what? Let's run build again.
Yeah, it should still build. So now I think what we need to do is comment out or skip this test, which I'm going to go ahead and take the liberty of doing.
Which one?
Did you run the build already?
Yeah, it's building all right. Where are you?
It's not showing me the build for whatever reason.
I just ran npm run build, so it's just checking the TypeScript compilation. I've not run the tests.
Right. Is it still going?
No, it's really quick. It's in the terminal. Maybe you can't see the terminal.
I can see the terminal, but I think it was so fast I didn't see it change.
There you go.
So yeah, now we'll come back to AutoKit GitHub test, and I think what we want to do is we want to say it allows. Let's start out with the team members. Actually, let's say that if you, I'm in AutoKit GitHub test.
Yeah, I'm
now.
with you. I'm watching you.
So I'm gonna, just looking at the way we've done contributors, we're talking about the team members first. So we say that allows team members to be configured, and that's all we need to do. We don't need to do differently across multiple calls. So I'm going to say that our config is a new AutoKit, null AutoKit GitHub config. Actually, no, let me back this up for a second. I want to come up here. It does not have blah, 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 blah. By default, teams have no members. I want to get this one working first. So I want to say AutoKit GitHub create null. And have this work.
But with the new type.
With the new type, yeah.
Yeah, so there's our unit test that we want to run for this. So have we got an only on this context here? That's what we need, isn't it?
Yeah.
On line 1, 2, 4. And then I'm giving up on the watch.
And just for those of you watching, the reason I want to run this by default test first is because we're going to be using our defaults in the more complicated tests, and I just want to get that. I don't want to get.
It's good. It's kind of part of the refactoring to then use the new type, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
Talking of people watching, I now want to go and see if there's anybody on the stream at all.
Well, there's the recording.
Yeah, we haven't tweeted about it. I think if we tweeted about it, we might.
I mean, how would anybody know? There's a T-shirt. I think it's done by Penny Arcade that I want to have. It says "Stream like nobody's watching," and it shows viewers 0, favorites 0, subscribers 0, and that's the T-shirt I want.
I'm tweeting about us now. And there's only 15 minutes left for something of our booking, isn't there?
Yeah, the time just flies by. I wish we could spend more time on this because I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Well, you exhausted me last week though, so I have to.
You looked so
that.
tired at the end of the day yesterday or last time.
Right. Anyway, so let's make the most of these valuable minutes that we have.
So my thinking is that we can sneak up on this rather than having create null take the entire null config. We can have it take. We can have it take. Well, let's see. How do we want to do this?
Let's just smash it down. Come on.
Okay, do it. Do it. Let's see it.
How bad can it be? So we're going to do a null. The thing is, we can always pull back from that decision, right? But we can have a little go. So we're going to say it's going to be of that type, but we need to have a default because we've got loads of calls that are empty. So we can make a new null octkit config here with.
Well, I think that should
team
be
members look like an empty object, and commit date's going to be an empty object, and that's
no.
valid.
I disagree with that.
Okay.
You're almost there. Can I try for a second?
Yeah.
I think we do want create null to have a default of new null octkit config, but up here we want these to have a default of nothing and nothing.
Right, so it owns the
right,
but it's an empty object, the top one.
It's an empty object, not an empty array.
Yeah, because it's a mapping from team name to list of users. So right, and then now the side effect of that is that the null octkit class is taking is getting an object that it doesn't expect.
Okay, so let's go ahead and
what's going on there? Yeah, because it's expecting different thingies, so we can just blow this to bits. DT brackets, and we're gonna go up options null. Oh, is it options or config?
config.
So I should have called that config. And we should have called it config higher up as well, because I think we called it options somewhere else.
No, I think we're good.
Yeah, there it's called options.
Oh, yeah.
So it's that Shift F6.
Control T will give you will give you a list of refactorings you can do.
Config. There, right, sorry. Back to where we were. So now we're down here trying to build a null octkit. We've been given this config. Can we just
we should be able to just say
only, just keep it there, not keep these two.
No, wait. Let's take it in smaller steps. So if you undo that and we just do config dot team members and config dot. Oh wait, no, that's not going to work at all, is it?
Well, the thing is, that what we're expecting to be in those is a completely different beast to what we've put in them. So I was kind of thinking we would just throw them away.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, just blow them away, and then we just won't use them at all because we don't have that test.
So we have to think here now. So list members in org should
just take this out. Nothing.
Well, I think that expects something. Just pass it an empty array for now.
Yeah.
But it should be this dot config dot.
I just want to get it working again.
Yeah.
I want to take smaller steps. So I think if we just say nothing,
this is the only bit that's wrong. These two lines that you just wrote. I think everything else is good. And we've left this slop in that we don't need anymore, so we can just get rid of these two lines.
Yeah. So I think the test will pass at this point.
Let's find out.
I just did it.
Yeah. And I just put an empty carriage return in afterwards. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So could we make them still pass, but actually put something out of the config object in on line 104?
So come back with me to the OctoKit test code. So
because I think we're still missing a thing.
Right, but we're missing it because we don't have the tests. So if you come with me to OctoKit GitHub test, no, OctoKit
actually,
GitHub test.
We're not missing something. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
So we have, by default, teams have no members. That's working. And then by default, users have never made a commit. Does that work?
No.
That actually, though, that's not the new behavior we want, is it? By default, let's see, has committed since. How does it work if you ask for a user that doesn't exist right now?
You get a funny 404 error from GitHub that you have to try and understand. In fact, in the main branch this week, we wrote a new test case into OctoKit GitHub for something like that. I think it might not have been this particular example, but something like that.
Right, because the adapter should probably take that 404 and translate it into a better exception.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I think I want to do here is by default, rather than saying users have never made a commit, let's just say that by default, users have don't exist. And so what we want to do is say that, oops.
I'll fix that. You keep going.
Okay. And what I want to do is say assert that if we ask for a user that hasn't been configured, then it throws an exception. I don't know how to do that with
I will show you how to do that because I did it last week with the other thing. I think it's throws. Now I need to check that bit. Can't quite
remember. I want a better name for this test, not so much users.
It's rejected because it's a promise. So we could just say rejected, or we could say what type of thing it is that's.
Let's
what type of error?
Say, can we say something like, "This is the error message we expect"?
Yeah, you'd have to do. Yeah, I tend to use types for that rather than asserting on the error message, but you can check that it's got a property. Hang on a sec. you just wrap that in. You going to finish?
Sorry, I'm just sort of thinking this through.
Yeah. So we need to probably backtick this to be, yeah. And then, yeah, so what do we do is we go as property message. I think. Yeah. Oh, WebStorm doesn't like the way you spell unconfigured.
Really? What's the correct way to spell it?
I don't know. Perhaps
I think unconfigured is not a word. Let's see. Per user, boop, in null. I think that's what I'd like the default behavior of this to be. If you try to ask for a user that doesn't exist, then it fails fast.
I suppose what I was wondering about was whether we could actually just use the same error as you would have if you asked GitHub for a user that doesn't exist, and that what we see on the surface here is the same error, just like
I mean, eventually,
GitHub
if we were actually implementing that behavior, I might want to do that. But here, I mean, there's a lot of value in descriptive error messages in terms of debugging, right? So doing a generic 404 would make it harder to debug when this goes wrong.
I don't mean this to be a generic 404, but I'm just thinking that the code that throws this error could be in the OctaKit GitHub class, the main adapter class, the production code, rather than in the
I see what you're getting at.
Test in the null.
I think that would open up another can of worms today. But if we had the code that you had already written to do the exception handling, then yes, I would agree with that.
All right. So let's stick with this then. So we want to throw an error, but we aren't. So we are in OctaKit GitHub, but we're in the null where we are calling list members in org, I guess?
No, I think it's list commits, line 111.
And we're going to get that call with an argument, which we're going to need to know. So where's the... Oh, I missed the types now.
Yeah, I saw it a moment ago.
List commits. Oh, it's going to be an object, right? It's going to be an object. So we've got an author in that object.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we could just go, where are we? Why won't you let me do that?
Yeah.
Oh, because it's like this. Which is an annoying feature of TypeScript.
Oh yeah, that's super annoying.
So
but it's partly because there's not really proper types on OctaKit GitHub at the moment.
Exactly.
Yeah, not just the nullables, but just throughout, it's using a lot of bare objects and stuff. Yeah, so now we should see it say it expected one message, but got yikes, hopefully. Another.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
So now all we have to do is format that string.
I'm putting it in.
Yay.
I got to say, Prettier is growing on me. Like, not having to worry about it. Because I do spend a certain amount of time, like, just putting things on the right lines when I'm
Yeah,
coding.
I never think
And
about that anymore. It just goes bling. Yeah.
all right, so we're at the end of our time we had planned. Um, so what do you want to do next? Do you want to stop here? Do you want to keep going for a little bit longer? Um, do you want to? I guess we should stop the camera and then schedule if we're going to stop here.
Yeah, I would. I don't mind. I could carry on for another 15 minutes or so, and I'm just thinking. I think it's a good idea to get our heads up anyway and think about, because I said that thing half an hour ago of like, oh, let's just do it. So
Mhm.
are we doing all right with that, or do we want to get reset hard?
No, I think, well, we definitely don't want to do get reset hard because we haven't been committing. But we, I think we're on the right track. Um, and I think with another 15-ish minutes, we should be able to finish this refactoring, get the new test in, get the new configuration in, and that'd be a good stopping spot.
Yeah, I'm really like unhappy to stop while these are still hard coded here. I want to be
Yeah,
reading. Well, that config object there is still grey. I'd
yeah.
really like to get to the point where that's getting used. So
Okay.
let's keep
So yeah,
going.
let's do it. So if we go back to AutoKit GitHub test, we do have now users with no configured commits throw an exception. So I think if we scroll down, we can do the next test.
It allows team members to be configured. So this time we would do.
Actually, hold on. Back up for a second. I think we need the parameters to be named parameters, not positional parameters,
Why?
because sometimes we're going to configure
One without the other.
one without the other. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
pausing because I don't know if that's actually true, but that's true often enough for these configs that
The
that's
thing
probably
is,
how I do it
this
by
object
default.
is nothing if it is not just those two positional parameters smashed together in an object. So I'm thinking it's going to become the focal point for sort of builder syntactic sugar. But
Mm-hmm.
right now, um, I think we should just keep using it as a crude tool and just set them equal um,
To empty
to
objects.
empty objects if we don't need to use them, and then we can clean that up.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Because otherwise we may as well just build a bare one ourselves.
Well, except now that it has types. I mean, the main thing that this is
Yeah.
giving us is it's typed nicely, and it does have we do have the ability to add methods to make it a builder in the future.
Well, certainly, like, so what I would often do, right, is with value objects like this, is I would add a with method. So you could then just create a copy of the object with different data in it. So we'd keep the commit dates, but we'd change the team members and create a new instance. So we could work it like that. So it
I think
starts out, and
that's
then we
step.
don't have to
I
have
think
a
that's
hard
our
code
next
the
step
defaults
because we've
anyway.
only got 10, 15 minutes to go here.
Yeah.
So
So
I
we'll
think let's
stick with
just,
the hard coded thingies for now.
yeah.
So the team members is going to be an object with
Teams with list of members.
contributors, committers.
Actually, may I?
Yeah.
I have another idea here. Because when I'm writing an adapter, it's the API is built for the callers, but the code is ignorant of the callers. Does that distinction make sense to you?
The code is ignorant of the callers. I would hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's built. I design the API for the callers, but then when I implement the API, I do it in ignorance of the callers.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say committers here. I would say team one.
Okay. As we write the tests. Yeah.
And team two.
Yeah.
And then I do my assertions.
We still need to create the GitHub client.
Yeah, I'm just stapling.
So
I'm just sort of
team
tacking this together so
one,
you can see what I'm thinking.
team 2. We can even do team 3 and check it's empty as well.
Yeah, let's do that. So that's sort of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I got you. Can we both type at the same time in different places? Can I do this?
We can.
Without messing up your
It's kind of fun.
cursor, because you can do that, and then I can do config, get rid of everything else. All right, so try running it.
Yeah, go for it.
Right, so this is where the hard-coded empty array comes in.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, let's go back to our AutoKit GitHub and see what we can see.
So we are doing allows team members to be configured. So here, can we just change it to return this dot team members? No, we can't, because we don't even know what the so the config has got team members. Oh, we've got this problem again. I figured out what that is, by the way, this thing. Can I fix it?
Sure.
So if we change this to use an anonymous function instead of that should work now. Yeah. And then team name is going to be in here somewhere.
Yeah, let me go look at that.
Is it just called team?
Git members of, list members of team. It's team slug, team underscore slug.
Underscore. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Showing their Ruby roots there.
Yeah, and that should work, right?
I'm convinced that it will. No. Okay, so what's this for? Can I read properties of undefined reading map?
Here.
Team members. So it should be a thing with a login in it.
Sorry, what? I fixed it.
But it's still not quite right, I don't think. Oh, no, it is, yeah, because that's going to convert. God, I missed the types. Yes, it's all right. My brain just farted, just ignore me. Huh, double question mark. Is that another way of saying or?
It's so or gives you the right-hand side value if it's falsy. Double question mark gives you the right-hand side if it's null or undefined.
Oh.
It's a new operator, and this is the first time I've ever gotten to use it. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, that's really good, because in Ruby you could do fetch on a hash, and fetch would run a proc run a lambda if the object wasn't in if the key wasn't found in the hash, or it would throw.
Right.
So you weren't getting that ugly thing where you asked a hash for a thing, and if it couldn't find it, it'd just give you back a null. It would be like,
which is nice.
Either get this
like
or this or throw. So yeah, really.
There's the to go along with double question mark. There's also question mark dot. For when you've got those ugly law of Demeter trains where you've got A dot B dot C dot D, and if A is null, the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah.
So you can say A dot question dot, and it will return, I think, undefined or null if any of them in the chain are undefined or null. I've never used that one. I try not to do long chains.
All right. So where are we going next? We want to
So
fix
yeah,
this
let's
one
look at the
now, don't we?
tests. What did you say?
The next one that we want to fix is the cheating that we've done, the hard coding that we've done on line 115 here, where we're just always returning an empty null commit list.
Yeah, it's just the next test.
So that's the next test here. Do you want to do this one?
Sure. Okay, so you start out with a null octokit config. Except we're going to start out with our team members as being something. And what we're doing here is we're saying user one, see, it's not allow commit dates to be configured per user. Last commit date to be configured per user. So user one is going to have a new date of 1 Jan 2010. And user two is going to have a new date of, oh no, this is going to be,
Yeah,
I think I have to do
durations again because it needs to work no matter when this test runs. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to do this, but I'm going to make it 10 and 20. Again, to preserve the fiction that I don't know anything about the colors. Yeah. And I don't know. Maybe that's just me being.
No, I think it's really nice to make the test data different to make that clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to assert that has, so let's see, actually, let's do it this way.
I'm just going to turn those into consts.
So, thank you. I don't know why it defaults to let.
So we don't have a GitHub client. We just lose that line where we made it.
Right, I'll go grab that. So then I'm going to search.
I mean, sorry to be picky, but your variables are not really named right. Because those are just durations. So, well, we should put the today minus into these bits here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I missed that.
So that's today. What do we want to do here for our test?
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Really what I want to do, I think I do want to actually factor out the duration. If user has committed since let's see. I'm just feeling this out. So we've got a user one. Let's just do user one for now. We've got user one who's committed
10 days ago.
So if he's committed since 11 days ago, that should be true. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Not that it doesn't hurt my brain slightly to work out whether that is true or not, but you're right. Yeah. And then 10 days ago is well, that's the one that we might need to argue with the product owner about, and then 9 is definitely going to be false.
Yeah, so I'll just comment those out. This is definitely going to be false. And this one is the kind of thing that's useful to have in a test so you can see how code behaves. So if I run this, I don't know what's going to happen. I think it's going to break. Yeah, we've got a hard-coded throw an exception there. So
okay, so let's see if I can make that work a bit better.
Yeah, please.
So we've got an author, we've got some configurations, so we should be able to say commit date equals this.config. Oh wait, I need to turn that into a thingy as well, so I can get to this.config dot commit dates for author. Yeah, so a thing that is sad about JavaScript is you can't do that, because throwing is not the same kind of thing apparently. So, but I can still do that, can't I?
Yeah, I would actually say if commit date equals undefined, like that, because commit date, because the truthy falsy behavior in JavaScript is a little bit wonky.
But don't forget we are in types here, so we'll be pretty sure that it's either got a date in it or nothing at all. But
good point.
But yeah,
good point.
It's one of those sort of luxuries that you get when you get used to types. You can be a bit more shorthand with that sort of thing. So now
I still like to be very explicit in my code, but that's just me.
Now we are. What are we doing here? So why are we passing a list of commits? What is that? I feel like this is going to be wrong now.
Yeah. So list commits.
That's still. We're also going to get a with, right?
Yeah, I actually don't think we need to do this. Yeah.
Since is a date. And then what we need to do is either pass back a commit list. We don't need that logic in there anymore.
It's either an array of 0 length or of...
Yeah, maybe we don't need a commit list thing at all. Should we just get rid of it?
What do we get? The result is...
return...
Yeah, it's just an array.
If since is greater than commit date. It may be greater than or maybe the other way around. I can't remember, but we'll see what the tests tell us. Return an empty array. Otherwise, return null commit. Something like that.
Yeah. Can I do a little bit of fixing up here?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say null octokit commit. And then I'm going to do something that you may dislike.
Oh, no, I love it. Less if statements, the better. Hurrah. And it looks like you might have actually thought through that logic. Cannot read properties of undefined reading length. So, because it needs to be in a data.
That's why we have the null members list.
Thing. Damn it.
Yeah. So, well, what we can do is we can just say return new null members list.
Yeah. I'll make one down here. Oh, sorry, you're going to use members list, right on. Yeah. Although that's going to map it to having a login from a username, which is a bit...
Sorry, what?
A bit of a hack. Yeah, let me make one.
Sure. Oh, did we not have a null commit list before?
Yeah, we did. I deleted it a minute ago.
Oh. Yeah, I shouldn't have used null members list. I was just sort of on autopilot on that.
It's sort of a stupid thing, really. That is going to be a string. Oh, were you changing that line?
No, I didn't do anything. All right, does that work? Did we get our logic the right way around?
Almost certainly not.
Well, here, let's try it the other way. I mean, why think about it when we can have the computer do our thinking for us?
Oh no! Do you need still need the equals? Maybe no. How can that be?
All right, I guess we have to do some thinking here. All right, so user 1 was 10 days ago. We know it's finding user 1.
I think it needs to be this, which is a combination we haven't tried before. I'm surprised it didn't work when you just did greater than.
It shouldn't be equal because we're doing 10 days ago and 11 days ago.
Yeah.
Did you run it?
No, wait a minute. So if since is after the commit date, if the commit date was 10 days ago and since is 1 day ago.
Since should be 11 days ago. Yeah, and so it should be since is greater than or equal to the commit date, then we do a null octokit commit. This should work. Let's do this.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking next as well. I wonder if we just set up our test data wrong. Okay, I'll run the test. Since is 30th of September, commit date was 1st of October. So that should return something, and we expected true but was false. I mean, are we doing something dumb in the test?
I'm running it again. I added the commits array.
True. So this
So we have an empty array of commits.
weird. Okay, so that's something wrong in our logic there.
Yeah, its since should be less than. I don't know why this date stuff is breaking my brain so bad.
It's really weird. I mean, it's why I added that little bit of for the duration of and today minus stuff because it was hurting, and I needed to try and find a way to express it.
Oh, you
But
know what
still
it
doesn't feel like
is?
I've got the expressiveness quite right.
Prettifier removed my parentheses,
Oh,
and that is wrong. Because what is happening is it's saying since is less than this.
that's weird.
Prettifier is screwing us up here.
That's very surprising to me. So, what you think
let me
that
do it this way.
that's doing commit? Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
you know, whatever. We'll figure out a better name for that later. But if I run the test now, I think it will work. I'd be wrong. But
so what do you think is happening here?
Is less than commit date.
So is has commits true or false?
Yeah, let's going on
log
here?
has commits. Oh, come on, my typing today. Has commits.
Oh, come on.
Has commits
is false. But
so
since, can we not
give
compare? Are these proper dates?
Oh, maybe you can't do that. Maybe this is like one of those JavaScript gotchas that people make funny videos about.
You can compare dates, but maybe these aren't dates. Are these something else other than dates?
I think I've seen us use dates everywhere. They're typed as dates. Are you sure you can compare dates? I wouldn't be confident about that.
I'm fairly certain you can because they implement value of, which converts to. Well, let's just convert them to ticks. What's the right way to do that?
Yeah, should we just be able to do equal, greater than or less than, yeah.
I'm just looking up how to.
Is less than 2022. I'm going to just try it on the command line.
Okay, can I try a few things here?
Do you want to do it in the node
No,
console?
I just want to muck around with the code. Okay, so it's saying that Boolean since is less the commit date is is false. And if we change this to be greater than or equal to, does it still say it's false? It's still, how is that? What is going on here? This is crazy pants.
One of them is not a proper date or something.
Yeah. Well, since is declared to be a date. Commit date is today minus. So your thing today minus blah blah blah, is that returning a date?
Yeah.
Well, we've declared it to be a date, haven't we?
It in new date. Yeah. If there was anyone watching the stream, they might be able to pull us out of the hole here.
Yeah. Well, if we were looking at the comments, there
is. I just looked. There's one person called Konzinov who 20 minutes ago said safe navigation operator, but I don't know. I guess that's the name of that thing you were referring to with the question mark dot.
Okay, since is not a date, or it's not returning the proper value. So we're getting since from list commits.
Because it needs to be a string for GitHub. So it's probably because we've got any somewhere else that we haven't noticed this. If you look in OctaKit GitHub, we convert it into a string.
Bingo.
So that's what it is. So we need to wrap since in new date before we can do any comparisons on it.
And that should now work.
How did you discover it wasn't a date?
Minutes. What'd you say?
How did you discover that it wasn't a date?
Oh, I put dot value of at the end on line 121.
What do we press to inline something?
Command option in.
And then we don't need this line. We could even inline commits.
No, don't do that. I've got another plan.
Okay.
So now that we've done this, what I'd like to do is change this to be
and then the hard-coded thingy isn't any of our business there.
I think that's a pure refactoring.
Yeah.
If I did that right.
It's just the we've got a line of slop on 117 we don't need anymore.
And then I'm gonna inline line 116. Okay.
So do we have any more tests left in OctaKit GitHub?
I don't think. Well, we have some commented out assertions.
Oh yeah, because we were going to do a few more edge cases.
Yeah, but I think that's easy. Let's just uncomment those lines, set line 208 to false. And 208, actually, we don't know the answer. We need to look at how GitHub actually behaves in that very specific edge case. And
yeah, I'd imagine if you said has anyone done any commits since Tuesday, and they've done a commit on Tuesday, it would probably give you the commit with my guess.
Let's go ahead and put it that way for now, just because we're out of time. But this is the kind of thing that I would actually go check for real.
Yeah.
Because we do want the simulated behavior to match the real behavior.
All right, good. So we got there with redesigning our configuration object. We've started to introduce a bit of typing. We built a test for the main function to help us do that. I don't feel like we finished that test.
I don't think we finished that test. Actually, yeah, if we unskip that test should now work. And if it doesn't, I think we should probably stop anyway. But
I'm just going to run all the tests. Have we got any more skips or? Yeah, that's in generated JavaScript. Don't care about that. What about only?
So it turns out we did the redesign and we did the TypeScript stuff together.
Yeah, a bit. We've done half of the TypeScript. The other half, which is kind of the gnarlier half, is the half around which file is this? Is failing retiring active contributors. We need to prettify the retire function. Yeah, the half around GitHub and the OctaKit library.
Right, just the remaining, the fact that it has a lot of, not the nullable stuff, it just doesn't have typing in general. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, because that was part of, so I played with it this week and I'm no longer worried about it, but the thing that was concerning me was because we were using we were sort of mirroring the OctaKit library's types in our null wrappers. We were going to have to mirror their types as well, and then that was going to start to get ugly. But actually, it's fine. We have to define quite a few types for all of the different types of responses and the query parameters that they need and things. But we can, we can do it fairly neatly because there's, we use a massively limited subset of what's actually on those types, so it doesn't look too ugly in the end. Yeah, I'm just trying to work out why my main test run's not working.
Well, I think we should probably stop here.
Yeah. So what's next? What would we do next?
Well, we could do some more work on the OctaKit GitHub types, but that'd be nice to have, but I feel like it's unnecessary for finishing the exercise. I think what would be next would be to convert this retire inactive contributors test to be to do specs as originally planned, and then we should be done.
Yeah, that's the main thing for me, is understanding how we can use these new configuration objects in the Cucumber tests. Yeah. I can't get all my tests to run because we've got a warning from here when we've got an empty function. I wonder if I just change that to a... Or maybe I can tell ESLint to just not worry about it. Might be the other thing.
So why does it need the arrow syntax rather than a function syntax?
Well, so we need it for being able to use this the way that we wanted to.
Oh.
Because the arrow function style
inherits
doesn't
the this.
have a this, so it just picks up this from the outside context, which is what we were wanting. I don't know, ESLint's just complaining about us using empty functions because it's configured to not let you define empty functions, which I should probably just work out how to turn off.
Yeah. Well, I think we should probably stop here.
Yeah.
We've accomplished what we've done today is we have modified the OctoKit GitHub null configuration to be more ergonomic so that it actually fits the way we want to use it. And what we'll do next time is hopefully actually implement the specs. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds really good. We'll turn the cameras off and work out when we're going to do that next.
Okay, bye everyone.
Where's the window where I turn it off? There it is.